Oh, sweet. Well, welcome everyone to part two of Vox Live. It's going to be awesome. My name is Levi Rennick. I get to play host slash am pastor and director of youth and adult discipleship here at Vox. As always, we've got Jonathan on the cameras. Say hello, Jonathan.
Woohoo. Hello, good morning. Glad you guys are here. Just, once again, this is our second episode, so just remembering how to do this over here. Good to hear that.
Yeah, we'll have lots of mistakes today. It's going to be awesome. Speaking of mistakes, joining us today is Joy Clee, bookkeeper extraordinaire and director of children's ministry. And we have Rustin, who is Marcola's husband.
So far.
So far. At least the first model.
She hasn't smartened up yet.
Well, we're going to chit-chat a little bit about our sermon series based on Celebration of Discipline by Richard Foster. If you've not read it yet, I suggest you check it out. You have my copy, which looks just like this copy. There's two copies, Rustin. One is mine. One is this one in the library.
Maybe more than two copies.
Any more than two copies is excessive. Or you can do what I'm going to guess Vox did to get this copy, which is go to Half Price Books based on the clearance label on the back and pick up your own copy, which is where I also got mine because Half Price Books clearance almost always has that book. But I actually read this book a long time ago, and Joy, you had said you had not read it before. You want to talk a little bit about?
Yeah, I hadn't. It was really good. It was kind of hard to get into at first because a little bit of old-fashioned language, I felt like. But once I started reading it, I was just really hooked. And it really
old-fashioned, like 1987 or
yeah, like back in the day.
Yeah, like it doesn't sound like a TikTok.
But no, I thought it was so great and also terrible because you're kind of like, oh yeah, I should really do that stuff.
Look at all these things I'm choosing not to do so far.
Really need to work on that. But all the best books are like that, like really like illuminating and convicting at the same time. Yeah.
No, I totally agree. It's a lot more enjoyable though to read books where you're like, man, I already do all this stuff. I'm so good at this. I can close it, not be challenged at all.
You're like done.
Speaking of that idea though, are there things in the book that you guys read on the spiritual disciplines that you're like, man, that one is particularly easy and I already do that? Or are there ones that you were like, man, that one's really challenging and I could definitely do better with that? Like, I can start with my own example. Meditation for me is extremely difficult. I think it goes into that Enneagram stuff that we've been talking about a lot at Vox. And being a gut type, it's like, I don't need to pause and think about this. I can just do it. And just go. And even things like prayer, there's some element of like control that my type 8-ness likes of like, yeah, I can control the words I say, or I can choose to read the liturgy. But meditation truly is just like, oh, I can't do anything. I can't force it. I can't say anything. I just have to sit and be. And so for me, that's the most difficult, probably of the, 12 disciplines we read? It's probably the most difficult for me to do because I so naturally push against it. But, I don't know.
Yeah, that's probably opposite for me. Meditation might be the easiest one.
Well, aren't you neat?
Isn't that funny? But some of the others I definitely struggle with. Meditations, I love starting with that one because it has to do with imagination and how we feel in the world and what our minds naturally rest upon. And I think that's a fascinating one. I think I probably learned about it in college when I first read this book many, many years ago. And learning that idea that our minds can go to God in anything and therefore make anything prayer, which is the follow-up discipline that flows out of meditation. So when I wake in the middle of the night, what do I allow my mind to go to? When I'm mowing the yard, whatever it is, almost anything can be an opportunity for meditation. So that one comes easily for me, Enneagram 4.
Yeah.
Some of the more active disciplines are harder. Serving, I don't really want to do that.
Just anyone?
I'll think about it.
I would love to volunteer someone to serve.
I do. I'll serve.
Yeah.
Quiet, tech man. It says person running the tech for everyone else.
I think just the difference of you two with meditation being strong for one and hard for the other. I think it also is maybe a good difference how Rustin pokes fun of himself of his sermons not being that applicable. But then these disciplines are all super applicable, and Levi, have been wanting to do this sermon series forever. So
That's true.
Any other thoughts about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I hadn't even really thought about that connection point of what's the joke that we do on staff? Sometimes I'm like, Rustin, we're all up here.
Yeah.
Let's make it down here for a little while.
Yeah.
Let's bring it down. What are we gonna do with that stuff?
Yeah.
And this book really is, I think it's such a good like bridge between like the up here-ness of faith and the
Yeah.
down here-ness of faith.
Yeah.
And
Because you kind of have to have that. You kind of have to have the here's why we do it,
Mhm.
but then bring it down to like here's some things you can try, you
Yeah.
know. And I think for me, the solitude one was like I naturally gravitate towards that, and that's where I gain energy. But at the same time, I was really really struck by the fact that he talks about solitude as like this inner attitude and not just being alone.
Mm.
Like I really like being alone, but also it's this inner attitude of like, okay, not having other voices, not having
Mm.
books or podcasts or something like speaking to you while you're alone.
Mm.
And so I was like, okay, that is a really interesting way to put it, because I feel like I have to have that alone time, but a lot of times I'm usually reading when I'm alone. You
Yeah.
know, that's what I try to do when I'm alone. So it's not actually being solitudinous. I don't know what the
Solitary.
solitary. There's a word for it.
yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I feel like it's easy for almost anyone to be like, oh no, I like to be alone and on my own, because who doesn't like to do what they like to do,
Mhm.
right? Like when I am like really spent, I'll go into my office at home and I'll be like, oh, I'm just gonna be alone for a while, and I'll turn on my computer, which has one monitor, and play a game, and then I'll put on Netflix on the other monitor, and then I'll have Google reading me like the news headlines of the day, and I'll have my phone
You'll be like,
out
alone
all
at
at the same.
last.
Yeah, and I'm like, by myself with all the people I like, but I have like 8 different things all going on. Like it's so noisy in there,
Yeah.
but it's like, I'm by myself. It's solitude.
yeah.
It's not actually
Yeah.
a spiritual discipline. You're just
But aren't they all
surrounding
like that in
yourself.
a way? Like they have kind of like this like really superficial meaning, you know, like
Yeah.
fasting is this and meditation is this, and you can really like, because they're so interior, you can really like fake them or just like kind of like skim the surface of them
Yeah.
really easily without
I-
having anything interior going on.
Yeah, like here's a silly example. I go to the gym and there's this guy there that I see all the time, and I've never once actually seen him lift any weight. But he goes
Levi,
around.
I'm sitting right here.
I'm aware, but no, it's so weird. And Shelby pointed him out to me because I've like just forgotten about him.
Uh-huh.
The guy will walk around and talk to like every single person extremely nice. He's like, "Hey man, you're looking big," and say nice things, and we'll be there like over an hour.
Does he work there?
Mhm.
No,
he doesn't work there. He's
he doesn't
just
even
like-
work there. And then it's just like, what are you doing here? And every single time I see him, I feel like he's the guy. He's like, yeah, I go to the gym about an hour a day.
And you're like,
What do you do at the
"You
gym?
sure
Well, I
do."
go.
Yeah.
I'm at the gym,
Yeah.
hour a day. Like, but never seen him on a treadmill.
He tells
Never
his-
seen him
tells
move
his
weights.
doctor that I go to the gym every day. I don't
Every
know
day.
why.
I'm
I
there.
don't know why my blood pressure is so high.
We all have different relationships with the gym, which is a good point, because I think we all have different relationships with each of these as they're filtered through our personalities, and just as we help each other so much on staff. I think that's an interesting thing to undertake if you want to jump into one of the disciplines, to have conversations with people of different personalities. I think even this sermon series, we mentioned this the other day in staff meeting, that we've got, if you want to put it in Enneagram filter, we've got, the gut type, head type, heart type, and we've kind of put the sermon series out there from 3 different perspectives, and I think that's been really interesting. But when I filter these through, or not filter them, but I hear you talk about meditation and what that might mean to you as opposed to me, or solitude, which comes naturally to you, but maybe it's a stretch for somebody like me, who needs affirmation of other people around me all the time, telling me how cool solitude is, so that I'll do it. It's kind of helpful to, I don't know, just get a different flavor from different personalities, and it deepens my understanding of how these disciplines hit people differently and how they can be useful.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
It-
that's true.
It's I think just really natural to gravitate towards the ones that are just reinforcing our own compulsive,
Right. I'm really good at this.
compulsive
I'm going to do some more
personalities.
of it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Whereas for me, it might be good to be stretched. And that's why I love being around people who are different from me. And it's nice to have like Jonathan on staff, who keeps us constantly outward focused and serving. That doesn't come naturally to me. I need to be around people who draw me out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you have to start somewhere too. Like Joy
Yeah.
talked about at the beginning, that
Mm.
she talked about beats. And what was your other thing?
Burpees.
Burpees, beats and burpees, things that are good for you. But you don't really want to do them. They're kind of terrible. And so
Yeah.
you need to start with the ones that,
Yeah.
if you're bad at, or if you're not
Starting
doing
with
any
it.
of these, start with the one
Yeah.
that's easier for you so you can at least get moving.
Yeah.
Work your way
like
up
that.
or
Like
something.
anything is good. And I learned this from Dallas Willard years ago when he said, you know, how does one become a Christian? How do you become a disciple? And we've made that, of course, so much about a profession of faith or coming forward or praying a prayer. But his deal was like, really, did Jesus teach anything that you would like to learn how to do? And there are disciplines for that. So it might be a good place to look through of like, what is it that I'm lacking in my life? Is it connection with others? Well, you know, worship might be a good place to start, where I'm actually around other people and make that part of my rhythm. So the disciplines have answers for us of whatever we're lacking, and that's probably a great place to start in the spiritual life. And I think Jonathan's right. You can kind of get on this virtuous cycle at any point. You can jump into any of the disciplines, and they kind of fold into one another.
And I think, I mean, for a lot of people in our community, they're probably already doing a lot of the disciplines, right?
That's right.
You know, so it's easy to be like, okay, well, I'm already doing this one, I don't need to think about this. But, you know, as we think about different ones, service, like, okay, we have such a faithful community and so many people serve.
Yeah.
But it's really great, even for myself, to like step back and think, like, how do I feel when I don't get appreciated, you know, or how do I feel, you know, about doing this yucky service, or, you know.
I think it's important to like claim your treasure in heaven for what you're already doing. Like, if you're already serving in children's ministry, you might as well make that a spiritual discipline and get credit for it.
Yeah. Is that double dipping?
No,
Discipline
I think it's
and
good. I think you're right. So much of what we already do, and maybe that is my bit toward meditation. Like what I'm already doing, if I turn my mind to God while I'm doing it, it already counts. Like I'm already there. So much of life is already that way.
I feel like also oftentimes Christians especially have this really bad habit of like, well, if you're not miserable, it's not spiritual. Like, well, no, if you enjoy doing it, it doesn't count. Like, and it's like, well, hang on a second,
that doesn't discipline, right?
That doesn't feel that doesn't feel right. When in reality, like if you know, thinking about professional athletes, let's say, like they're doing it because they love the game, right?
Yeah.
If you told me to go run a football field, I'd rather die. Like that sounds miserable.
But what if I said I'll give you $1 million?
All of a sudden it's like, yeah, but or if you were like, Levi, we're gonna throw a bunch of youth out on a field, will you toss the ball with them? It's like, absolutely I will. That sounds great. And other people are like, how much am I getting paid for that? And so I feel like once again, a great starting point with this, or even any other spiritual discipline, is just like, what are you already doing that you enjoy? Or just to say, what do I enjoy? How can I bend that into a discipline? Right? Like, if you already like reading, let's say, to say, okay, I'm going to make this spiritual discipline. I'm going to read something in scripture or a Dallas Willard book or something that I enjoy doing. I can just put a slightly more spiritual bend on it and direct it towards God.
Yeah.
Instead of just like, what do I hate doing? Okay, well, that's
do
probably
that.
what I should do because God says do what you hate.
That's good. Somebody the other night from the last Enneagram class was asking me about rule of life, and I mentioned that occasionally. Maybe we need to do a class on that. But part of rule of life is actually just forming in your life a commitment to certain disciplines that give you a sense of connection. I mean, to try to make it less ethereal and spiritual. When do you feel most connected to God? What are the activities that you're doing? When do you feel most connected to others and a sense of belonging? What are those activities? Well, you just, whatever you're already doing, you say, I'm going to stay committed to these activities. What are the things that, you know, make you feel disconnected from others or from God? Well, those are maybe things to refrain from. And you can really kind of just do inventory of your own life and begin there and maybe then build out from there. But most of us, that would be enough.
Yeah.
Right? How do I feel connected to God? When I'm studying, okay, I should do that more often and make sure that I stay committed to that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really true. And also, I mean, that's also, I feel like sometimes we feel like we have so many things we need to do. You know what I mean? Here's, what did we have? 12 spiritual disciplines. Like, here's so many things I need to work on. But even just saying I should do more of the things that connect me and less of the things that don't, that's a pretty big deal. I mean, it forces you to take some inventory. It forces you to think, reflect inwardly, which we don't do very often.
Which is one of the disciplines you talked about, right? I mean, it's connected to simplicity, and that's about decluttering our lives.
Mhm.
Probably
Yeah,
most
kind
of
of
us
focusing.
already do too much, and that's like the good news of disciplines.
Yeah,
Is it's probably not about doing more. It's probably beginning with like doing less,
yeah,
so that we have room to reflect on what we're actually doing.
yeah, yeah.
You know, what's
Focusing on
working, what's not working.
refocusing
Yeah,
what's important.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a positive message or not. I think we like to stay distracted. We like to stay busy, so we don't have to think.
Yeah, and I think that's even like something that would even like when you read scripture like that bothers the disciples almost, like the unbusyness of Jesus.
Mm.
That he'll be like, okay, well, we're going to go in this direction, and the disciples are like, all right, let's do it. That sounds great. And he's like, oh, I'm going to talk to this person on the way, and they're like, oh my gosh, Jesus, like we're supposed to
We
keep
ever gonna
moving,
get there?
like, but the
Yeah.
unbusyness of Jesus was like such a huge mark on his life and ministry, and I feel like that's what the disciplines, if we're good at them, call us to do, not to just reclutter our life with all the stuff we should be doing, but
Yeah.
actually make room for when we see a need, we have the
Yeah.
energy to embody it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have to achieve all 12 like a checklist.
Well, you do, to be clear. I've seen your schedule. You could do with some busyness.
Yeah, as a pastor, you need to do all 12. Report back to the
You
rest
can be
of us.
like, this
But-
one's terrible. This one's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, we actually have your report card here from staff. We're going to work through them all.
That's good.
I think also it might be helpful for people to have not necessarily a goal, but think of something that they do need to be working on that the disciplines can help with. Like, I need to feel less anxious, so
That's right.
I'm going to focus on solitude and meditation.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of reverse engineer it, and almost like a doctor check, and like, I'm feeling this. What do I need to do
Yeah.
to take to not feel
Mhm.
that way, or not
I
to
can tell
be
you
that way?
one that has helped me a lot over the years, and I'm still terrible at it, and that's why it comes to my mind. And it's one that Joy talked about. I actually don't remember which discipline it was connected to, but the story you told stuck with me about the laundry on your line and the neighbor. Can
Oh,
you
yeah.
remind us of it?
Oh, yeah,
It was so
yeah.
good.
So my neighbor came over and we were chatting. And he said, "Hey, I noticed you've been hanging your laundry out on the line, and
Yeah.
I just wanted to let you know that I have like this dryer that is in our basement. You can have it if you want it. We were not using it." And I just told him, I was like, "Oh, actually, like I'm kind of a weirdo. I like to hang my. We have a dryer that works. I just like to hang my laundry up on the line."
And also, to clarify, it wasn't Joe who everyone boxed.
It wasn't.
It wasn't
a
that
different
neighbor.
We have more than one neighbor.
It was the neighbor who will never come to Vox.
And if he does, I feel like this is not a bad story. I'm not telling a bad story about a neighbor. Like, he was offering something generous and great.
Yeah.
And it was only later that I was like, wait a second, what if he
Yeah.
meant that he doesn't like
So-
my laundry? You know, like it was me that
Right.
was second guessing, like, what if?
Yeah.
Should I have, you know?
Yeah.
And it kind of goes to that kind of thing of like how we have to really speak plainly. And so I think that was under simplicity. That was under
Was it
simplicity.
simplicity?
Yeah, like simplicity with your words. Like,
Yeah,
say what you
being-
mean.
Say what you mean.
Careful.
But the thing that helped me was also living in trust relationships where I can trust the words that other people use. And I think just as a feeling person and kind of an empathetic person, I so easily slip into not just what people say, but their emotion and how they feel. And I want to read into that and sometimes take responsibility for that. And it gets me in all kinds of trouble. So I think that's something we've cultivated well on the staff, is being people who say what we mean. We trust one another with our words. And that sort of simplicity is a real free way to live in a relationship. It's helped me a lot. Dallas Willard taught this, that I think it's from First Thessalonians, where we're called children of light.
Mm.
And that phrase always got attached to this idea for me that we live in light and we're not in the darkness. And that means everything that we mean is what it is. We say what we mean what we say.
Yeah.
We don't have hidden motives.
Yeah.
You never have to question. If we are children of light, we don't have to question, well, what did she really mean by what
Yeah.
she said?
Yeah.
I can just say,
Which is
well,
such
Joy
a
said
terrible
this, I
thing.
believe her.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a much easier way to live.
Because I'm almost the opposite of where
Yeah.
I sometimes will look back and be like, did they mean something else? Like, I just was like, okay, this is what they said.
Yeah.
And I sometimes don't pay attention to the emotions that are going on, because I'm just like, I don't know what
Mm.
you're feeling and stuff, but here's what you're saying. I can
Yeah.
focus on that concrete thing. And sometimes people
Yeah.
can't do that, though. It's like, they're
Yeah.
like, I expect you to
Yeah.
read my mind. I'm not very good
Yeah.
at that.
Yeah.
Oh man.
or
Well,
we think we're good at reading one another's minds, and
Yeah.
we're not. So
Yeah.
it's better just to speak plainly and
Yeah.
have
And
honest
even
relationships.
with like your tone too, like that's one of the things that C.S. Lewis talks about, and I'm totally guilty of using like a certain tone. And C.S. Lewis talks about it because he's like, then you can like be really like oblivious and be like, well, all I said was, are you
Right.
going to do that? And what you really said is,
Right.
are you going to do you know, like you say it in a really terrible like and
Yeah.
you can like look back and be like, this is all I said. Is it like a very
Right. Deniability.
underhanded,
Right.
devious, manipulative way to
I don't
like.
know what she's referring to.
yeah.
I would never use it on Jonathan.
No,
But.
it's like there's a joke of like the phrase like that's your kid. If you say depending on what you inflect, it's a total like that's your kid. That is your kid. That is your kid. Like each one, like oh, it
Something
means something
completely
totally
different.
just by the
Yeah.
inflection. But oh man, well we've actually gone like considerably over our normal allotted time already. So
Oh.
way to be interesting people, guys.
No.
First off,
I don't know if any of that was interesting, but
well, it was interesting to me,
I'm sure it
and
was
I
at
had
the
to talk
time.
less, so it's a good thing for everyone. But let's just finish real quick. Let's go around as we finish and just say one of the disciplines, if you're willing to share,
Mm.
that you're working on,
Mhm.
or one that you are currently in the midst of. So I can begin and just say that something that I'm trying to do more of this year is just study.
Mhm.
Committed to trying to read really diligently this year, and for me, that's both taking the literal, like biblical study, but also
Okay.
reading a lot more fictional books and
Mm-hmm.
enjoying study in all components, not just taking it 100% literally. It's a discipline I'm working on this year.
Yep. I'm working on celebration. It's the one that's probably most difficult for me. I have a picture on my office door of Paul McCartney and Dave Grohl from a documentary where the Foo Fighters make records with different people. Paul McCartney comes into the studio and he's working with Dave Grohl. They're writing a song on the spot. It all is just coming together so quickly. And at one point, Dave Grohl looks at Paul McCartney and says, "Why can't it always be this easy?" And Paul McCartney says, "It is." So I screen capped that moment and put it on my door. And we talk about this, Jonathan and I, that if we're doing stuff that doesn't come easily and naturally, what are we doing to make it so hard? The Christian life is about imminent joy. It's invading our lives, and if our disciplines aren't leading us to life abundant, then we're doing it wrong. And so, as a naturally melancholy and dark person, I am trying to embrace receiving joy wherever I can find it.
I love it.
I was really struck by fasting after you talked about fasting, and it feels weird because it's like I've been trying not to talk about it because I feel like you know when people talk about fasting, and it's
You're not
always
supposed to talk about it.
yeah, like what happens in fasting clubs days, and I don't know.
It's Fight Club now.
Fight Club, that's
She's
it.
been fighting, not fasting.
But just whenever I've tried it in the past, it's always been like a thing to get through, like a milestone, like I did this, and I was just really encouraged to try it again and to really embrace the discomfort and to not try to distract myself. I think that was the thing that I really hadn't tried, even with all the different times of Lent. Like I feel like Lent is coming up and it's a great time to think about when we usually give something up. But all those times I'd ever given something up, I would try to distract myself somehow, right?
Yeah.
You know, and so this time I was really focusing on that aspect of like these. I think you said they're little pings or
Mhm.
reminders that I'm hungry. Okay,
Mm.
that's right. I'm fasting and I'm doing this for a specific reason, and I'm praying and I'm thinking about other people, and so yeah, so that's just something I want to lean into because it doesn't come naturally, but it does bring good results. It does bring
Yeah.
joy. And also when you look at it, I think with the right attitude, it's not just like a boo, I don't get to eat supper. It's an actual, I don't know, an actual thing you're working on.
Yeah,
So
I like it.
that's awesome.
yeah. Did you have something?
Yeah, I've been thinking about solitude. I've been trying to go on more long walks in our neighborhood and just having three little boys, but it's hard to have solitude. But our property is great, so just trying to walk the perimeter of our trails and stuff. But also just being able to find solitude at different times. So like we have two or three different construction projects going on at home, but when I'm working on those by myself, I kind of feel at my best. So you can find it in different times too. But you don't want to use those as an excuse for not having actual solitude without
Yeah.
doing other.
But sometimes doing physical stuff, like I always think
Yeah.
about like mowing the lawn. Like that's like the most, you know what I mean? Like you're just mowing and you can't really do anything else. And so I always have a lot of thoughts while I'm mowing the lawn.
Yes.
Well, guys, thanks for being here today. Appreciate you guys hopping on the camera. Hopefully, it wasn't too intimidating.
Wait,
If you're
there's cameras?
what? I thought we were just
Oh,
hanging
yeah.
out in a weirdly lit room with Jonathan on his computer. Well, if you are watching, guys, please join us Sundays at 10:30. You can also join us on our virtual Vox. If you're on YouTube, please make sure that you like and subscribe. Hit the bell notification. That way you know when a new video is live once a month.
Mhm.
And we will see you all next time. Thanks for tuning in.